What's happening, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today's episode is part 2 of our 07 GSXR 750, aka the Clapper build. Now, in today's episode, today is actually going to be all the fun stuff. However, we have one major problem. Alright guys, so it is not clickbait. Basically, if you look over here, there's a ton of parts that gotta go on this bike. We're gonna have a ton of fun doing it, but I have one major problem. And before I get to that, let me give you a little bit of background on this project. So the idea of this project, I want you guys to be able to build the exact same project. I know a lot of times I say that, but again, you guys don't really have the ability to paint things and do things of that nature. So I want this to be more of a, what you might call a bolt-on affair. Now, I have a lot of different body panels that I already bought that were pre-painted. Believe it or not, they're actually pre-painted. I'm using a pre-painted body kit for once. And, well, that's where the problem actually starts. Now, again, I want this to be a project where you guys can enjoy it and put it together if you guys like the way it looks or whatever. And the problem I have is that the kit that I ordered, which is over there in that big box, is not for the right bike. They actually sent a kit for an 05 GSXR 1000. This is an 07 750, two completely different bikes. And if you guys look online, they say those fairings will not fit this bike. So right now I'm left in a little bit of a dilemma. I can either do one of three things. One, I can buy another kit, which I researched the kits again. They've went up $200 since I bought this one. So they're kind of overpriced. I think right now they're almost $600 for the cheapest of cheap. And that's on eBay or Amazon, whichever you choose. I will post a link for all the stuff below as well. But FYI, it's going to bring our build costs quite a bit up, considering we only paid $1,000 for the bike. So that's option number one. Option number two is I can spend $200 and buy a completely all black or all white kit and have it painted whatever color I want. By doing that, a challenge might be that I have to come up with all colors that I have here in the shop. And I actually thought of a pretty good color scheme. But then there's option three. Option three is making those 1000 panels fit the 750, doing what everybody says can't be done. And with that said, I think you guys know what we're going to do. All right, getting into it, for some of you that may not be used to this channel, you're probably thinking, well, it's got to be 2 or 3. Well, we're doing number 3. We're going to fit the body panels that everybody says don't fit on this bike. We're going to fit them to it. Now, there's a little bit of pain that's going to be there, but if you guys are long-term subscribers, you guys know that we thrive on this channel for doing things that people say we can't do. So the first thing I want to do is I want to start on the tail section. That is probably one of the biggest differences. I think I can line a lot of the fronts up because the front fairings, a lot of the parts are the same. The gauges are the same. The fairings should, for the most part, kind of bolt on if we got the right parts, I think. We'll get to that, but again, I want to start with the tail. The tail's going to be the tough one because this tail is actually smaller than the 1000 tail, which ideally you would think would be perfect, but it's slightly different angle and shape. So I got to see what I can do. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to try to dry fit everything on here to see what it looks like. Okay, how is that for fitment? Look at the body lines, and they say, no, you can't do that. That's impossible. I haven't done anything. I literally just slid it on. I've not touched anything. No modifications whatsoever. The only thing I can see being a problem right now, the seat has a bit of a gap, but it'll lay flat eventually after sitting on that thing. I'd say it looks pretty darn good. Now, there are modifications that need to be done. I can see that to clear the tail light, I am going to have to remove the tip over sensor. That's okay. I'll just move it farther forward inside the subframe. I'll probably have to make a choice here on the original lower plastic bracket here, or the tray, and the aftermarket one where it'll be smooth and cut in. I'll have to try to fit it and see, because this might have to be half cut, as well as the other half cut, and retrofit those together. But one thing I want to show you is, look at the cowl, how it fits in. This is the clip to the cowl that holds this piece on here. It fits in like it was supposed to be there. I mean, literally. So, but all those people say, oh, you can't do that. You know, that just fuels me. So, time to move forward. Let's keep going on. I'll modify to make that thing perfect. Then we'll keep moving down the body. All right, and so first modification, as I just shared with you, was that we're going to replace or move this tilt sensor. And so what I did is I basically cut off straight back here. There's actually 2 holes that are existing right here, two bowl holes. I'm not sure what they're for, but I utilized them right here. Went ahead and screwed it in, and then obviously slid this in so it's perfectly level, and it's nice and tight, shouldn't go anywhere, and that's exactly the way we need it. Nonetheless, that's in right now, and the next thing I do is got to retrofit that light into the 1000 tail light, and then once that thing is in, I got to figure out what my clearance is. So let me do that, and I'll show you what I come up with. All right, so just before I fit this light in here, I've got one problem. The connector to this light, which is from the 1000, does not match the connector that comes from the 750. So I'm gonna go ahead and make my own harness, and I'll show you how I do that. I tried to check the old wiring harness from the bike to see if there's any plugs that fit. Literally not one fits, so I'm stuck having to make my own. All right, well, here's the magic to it. There's really not a whole lot of really magic. I just basically take 3 wires that are a little bit larger size, since those are kind of wide pins, and just shove the pin into the wire. And then what I'll do is I'll fill that whole section with some hot glue, and then I will basically take the connector off the side of the bike, the taillight side, and I will connect it to this, and it'll be like it never happened. Now, it seems kind of crazy, and there might be a better way. However, I've been doing this for years, and never, ever once has it failed. All right. And there is our final product. Looking pretty darn good and working perfect. Alright guys, so quick update. Here's what's going on. This thing fits back here perfect. Right here you can see we're off just a hair. It's real close. So what I'm going to do, I'm putting a 3D bracket that's going to basically go into this hole and let this go into that. So it'll hold it down like that. As for the back and the bottom, you can see I had the light in obviously already. I went ahead and cut the original undertail right here. And then I did the same thing with our aftermarket. And this is going to bolt up right there, and I can basically see how that's going to go. So it ought to be almost perfect fit. I'm really impressed by this. I'm not really excited about the way the lights fit, but that's just the fitment of the actual lights themselves, or the way the fairings are made, one of the two. Probably the fairings. But nonetheless, it's coming perfect. I'm almost done. I'm going to show you what it looks like when it's all done. Okay guys, it's pretty much done right now. I am waiting on one more bracket to print for this side. You can see what I did over here. I'll go ahead and I'll put that somewhere online for you guys to download if you guys are going to do this. I don't know why you do a 1000 swap, but if you are, for whatever reason, I'll put that online for you. You can see how clean everything is and how everything bolted up. Factory 2 bolt holes. We got 4 of them down here, all factory bolt holes. The only part I really don't like that I'm not excited about is the fact that this is on the underside from this. I wanted this down here and I had it, but because it's molded to be round like that, it won't clear that way, so it is what it is. But I have a couple things from the inside that'll be covering this. There's no holes anyways. I don't want the ECU obviously to get wet, but you can see overall it looks pretty darn good. In fact, I got the cowl sitting here. I've not tried to put it on, but we're going to. If I can do this one-handed, maybe. Well, I didn't latch it from the back. Give me a second. Let me pop it on and I'll show you what it looks like. All right, and so there it is with the cowl on. Now, I will say that this does not line up, and that's not because the cowl didn't line up. That's because the person that painted this didn't do it right. So, I mean, you can see how it's flushed the way it's supposed to be. It's just not painted correctly. But it is what it is. The key does work, though, flawlessly. That all bolted in correct, and like I said, I mean, for someone to say that this is impossible to put together, I mean, minus just having to go down a little bit when I put the adapter on there, you ain't gonna get much better fitment than that. So, it's time to move forward. We got other fairings to get on this thing. Alright, so next part I'm going to do, because it's fairly easy, is I'm going to swap the front fenders. Now, I know these are all the same, and that doesn't look like the OEM GSXR. It looks like a Hayabusa front fender or something. I don't know, it's strange looking. But I know this one will fit, so I'm going to throw that one on real quick. Alright, now we're getting there. Let's keep going. Alright, so moving forward, we have 2 brand new Continental tires that got to get thrown on this. But before that, I got some wheel painting to do. Now, I know what you're thinking. You guys don't have the ability to do the wheel painting. I understand that, and I have a great alternative for you with the decal kit. I'm going to put that link in the description below. Alright, so moving forward, I'm going to start with the back wheel taking off. Now, yes, I do have to take off the main axle bolt and everything. That's pretty simple, but I also have to take off this chain. And not because I need that to come off for the wheel, but because I need that to come off so I can replace it, because it looks terrible. I do have a replacement for it that I had off another bike. It looks almost brand new. Hopefully it's the right length. Anyhow, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just shave off 2 of these, what they call nipples right here on the ends of this link. I'm just going to pop that link out, and it should pull right off. Alright, and as you can see, I have the tops grounded down now a little below the surface. What I want to do is I want to take a flathead screwdriver and pry it in back here. And I'm going to take a hammer and I'm going to tap on it. You'll start to see that the holes are surfacing. And you're just going to kind of work with this thing until it pops off like that. You'll see you're exposed now. We can take a punch like this. Kick it right out. Now we're free. Alright, so with the wheels now off and the tires finally separated, it's time to move forward and get these things prepped and ready for paint. Alright, and so here are the wheels all sanded down and prepped and ready for paint. The paint color is going to be the color of choice, obviously, green to match the Ninja Green, which is our accessory color on our body plastics. Now, some of you might be wondering, well, why am I not using the wheel decals that I talked about? Because I actually already have the paint, and so it's free. So to keep this budget as cheap as possible, that's the route I'm going to go. Whereas if you guys had to go out and buy the paint, it'd be a lot more expensive. That's why the wheel decals are kind of the second best, but they're still not cheap. They're still like 90 bucks or 80 bucks or something like that. So they look amazing though. I prefer those, but again, I got to keep this on budget. Getting ready to spray. All right, as you can see, wheels are done. They look really good. I'm really excited about this. I gotta let them dry for about 24 hours to get the tires on, and I'll show you what they look like. Tires on rims, wheels on bike. And that is what I'm talking about. Let's keep going. Okay, and so at this point, what we're gonna do is we're gonna put on our upper fairing stay. We're gonna get a headlight mounted, or upper fairing mounted, and that way we can see kind of how that mid lines up. It might be good, it might be bad, we don't know. Let's get it on. Okay, so while everything isn't completed, the idea was just to line this up to see if it actually fit. Now, one thing I do want to point out is that if you look at the upper fairing stay, as you can see, it bolts on perfect, like it was manufactured perfect for it. Now, another thing I want to point out, we'll get to the gauges in a minute. This is the 750 gauge. You'll see it's not quite flush, but I have an idea that if I take the inside of it out and put it in the 1000 case, it'll fit perfect. But that's not getting ahead of ourselves, or would be. It's time to go ahead and fit the sides and the lower and see kind of how it scales out for what we need, because this is going to be the biggest takeaway if this thing works or not. Alright guys, so I need to get all these fairings bolted together, because what I'm trying to do is basically get them all together for the front half. I'll get the upper fairing stay on. I want to kind of hang them on there and see if I can, for the most part, fit them on there to see how they fit. One thing I do want to point out with these fairings, a lot of these plastic ones, the white plastic ones I should say, it's kind of a rough mold, and you'll have to shave down the little tabs here a little bit, otherwise it won't fit in. A little Windex doesn't hurt as well, but snapping them together, you gotta be careful that you don't crack the stuff, because it is pretty fragile. But I'm just basically, again, putting all this stuff together. I'm gonna snap it together, and then I'm gonna try to hang it on the bike to see how well it fits, and see what kind of modifications we have to do to make it look right. Wow. Yeah, that can't be done. It won't bolt up at all. It's impossible. You can't do it. Everything lines up perfect. The only thing that doesn't line up initially is where you have your push tabs that go in these holes here. I'll have to make some brackets for that. Bolts perfect. Bolts in perfect. Everything lines up. There is a little bit of gap right here. You kind of expect that, but it is what it is. But, I mean, come on. Seriously, look how good that looks. I don't even want to talk about it. That's all I need to see. Let's take it back apart. We got to finalize things and start getting all the little pieces put together. Alright, so stepping back a little ways, we got a lot of stuff to do to get everything working properly. Again, we're going to address the gauges and how the new cluster, basically case is going to fit in. We got some spacers to put in here, some of the rubber fitments and screws and stuff like that to make sure everything's bolted in. And then obviously I want to go ahead and run this wiring and get it all straightened out. I have another accessory I want to add to this thing to help kind of foolproof or future-proof typical Suzuki stuff. I'll get to that here in a second. And like I said, I just want to get this whole upper on so then we can start really matching the sides, because while it looks perfect, there's some things that I worry about getting lined up and getting working. My biggest concern is the very small gap between these headers and this front wheel. I think the forks are straight. I assume they were, but I don't know how you'd fit even the OEM, the plastics between that. I just don't know. So there's going to be a little bit of work to be done there. I might have to slide the plastics back a little ways. I don't know yet, but again, that's for the future. For now, we need to move forward and do some of this stuff. The very first thing I'm going to do, like I said, is take this back off, get all the lights and everything fitted in it so we can start getting this thing put together and be on here permanently. Alright guys, so let's look at these gauges now. On the left, you'll see this is the 1000 gauge. On the right is the 750 gauge. What you'll notice is pretty much the face of them are exactly the same. The only difference is this is angled down a little bit more than that one there. So I'm going to go ahead and pull these gauges out. I'll show you what they look like, and then we'll switch them over here and make sure that they work. Alright, so this part's pretty simple. All you're doing is pulling out 9 screws out of the back of it. You'll pry the back cover off. It should be fairly easy. And then you should be able to lift your gauge cluster right out of it. Now this isn't necessary because the faces are the same. So you can go ahead and leave your original face on if it's not damaged and keep yourself with a backup. And then what we're going to do is essentially take this, like so. It lines right up. We're going to put our screws back in. Okay, and so now that we have GSXR 1000 gauges, we're going to go ahead and throw them back in. And moving forward, we have a couple switches to switch out. The first one being the brake switch right here, and the other being the clutch. And finally, we get to get rid of the paper clip. Alright guys, so let's start with some fun goodies. I got some grips and I got some levers. Now, I had some all black grips. The problem was that they were kind of really hard, and my experience with having the really hard grips is your hands go numb and get sore when you're riding. I had these ones already in stock. They're brand new, even though they're gold. You won't see it much, but we're going to throw those on right now. Let's start with the grips. And some old school fake carbon fiber bar ends, they were only $1. Now, I don't know about the golden carbon fiber, it sure is funny looking, but it was free, basically, so who cares? Time to move forward to our fancy blue anodized double folding levers. Okay, and so moving forward, we have another accessory to add. Now, what this is obviously a convenience item mixed with a safety item. And to explain what I mean, obviously, as a convenience item, you can charge your phone while you're using Maps or Waze or whatever app it is that you're using on your phone while you're riding. But more so, this is a good safety item in that Suzukis are known to have the regulators go bad, and what would happen is it will overcharge your battery, and your battery will catch fire or melt, and cause serious problem, if not bodily damage to people that are riding the bike. And so what this does is this will show the volts as you're riding, and you can actually look at this and make sure that it's not over 14 point some odd volts like it's supposed to be. It starts getting to 15, 16, you know to pull over before damage occurs. And so what I'm going to be doing is wiring this into the front of the bike and mounting it here on the side somewhere, like so. So obviously it's nice and visible and it's not in the way of anything. And then what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be wiring it into the headlight. And the reason I'm doing that, rather than having to run this all the way back to the battery and find a live wire that's only ignition on, or having to put a switch on, I went ahead and put the turning signals where the old running lights would go. I think the running light idea was kind of stupid unless you're trying to do a color, and so it made sense much more to have turn signals here rather than having some bunny ears sticking out of the front with big old lights on them. So what that means is that I have switched power, which is in the form of a connector down here, and that connector is going to allow me to connect this to it without having to run wires all the way back. Alright, so we got the windscreen in. Unfortunately, that's not the windscreen that I wanted. In fact, this is what I originally ordered. This was my favorite part of the build, going old school with the clear blue plexiglass screen. Problem is, this was the one for the 750. We didn't realize that was going to be the wrong body. But then I ordered one for the 1000. And of course, Amazon lost it. So in the black goes, and we're just going to have to stick with that. But with that said, it's time to move on to the fairings on the sides. Like I said, I had some custom work to be done. We all kind of knew there was going to be not an exact bolt-on. So what I had to do right now is I had to get on all the heat shielding, especially because of how dumb and close the exhaust is to it. So that's going to be a very important part to be done. Got that part done, and what I'm doing now is I'm lining everything up because we knew that it was going to fit, but we knew that all the brackets or all the push clips, like these things right here, weren't going to line up with the frame because the frame's different. Obviously, this is in a different spot than the 1000, so I have to come up with custom brackets. This being one of them you can see right here, and it works flawlessly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do all those brackets. I'm going to get all these things bolted up to it, and then I'm going to show you exactly what it looks like and what I did. Alright guys, so here's where we're at so far. We knew that this side bolted up pretty darn well. It wasn't a whole lot I had to do. There was a little bit of modification, but overall it bolted up pretty good, even though it's not all clipped together. Right now I'm trying to fit this side here, and I'll show you what the problem is. We knew these stupid headers were going to be a headache. Why they got to swing way out, I don't know, but you can see it's pushing against this. And even the bracket that holds the black piece to the blue piece, that's not good, so I have to figure out something with that. Either that has to get cut out, or I need to change the headers. Moving to the back, everything lines up literally perfect. You can see underneath there, even though it's not clipped together, I can line that up and clip it up, but it's right against the exhaust. I mean, like, right against it. So I don't know what I'm going to have to do there, if it's going to have to be a different exhaust, or what I'm going to do, but I can tell you that I'd rather put money into exhaust than I would changing the body. Alright guys, so finally I think I have everything worked out. Let's take a look. So here's what I ended up with the front exhaust. You'll see that I had to cut all the mesh from here down because, again, it was against the pipe, and I had to kind of widen this out. You'll see right here, which made me lose the one bracket that was right here. So what I went ahead and did was put 2 screws down here to make sure it was held and it was holding good. It's holding really solid. I can push on it like I'm putting a lot of weight on it, and it's not moving, so that's pretty good. Over here, everything's pretty kosher. Gotta clip that back together. Everything's held together pretty good. Again, this side's pretty solid too. The only thing I have to do is I have to put my inners inside here. Not a big deal. That won't be hard. And then I had to modify this right here, you'll see, for the shifter, obviously. And then down here, this is the last part that I got to mess with. I got a basic bracket that's going from here to the exhaust bolt. However, I haven't put that in or clipped to the bottom. And the reason why is this exhaust can't stay on. Now, I wanted to keep the factory exhaust. This has been the first time I ever kept a stock exhaust. The problem was it just doesn't fit. So all I need is a link pipe and a silencer. So let's move forward and get one of those. Alright, so moving forward, we're going to work on taking off the exhaust. I do have to pull off this lower fairing lease, just pull out. I got a bolt down there. You can see there's a couple in here that actually hold from the back, and this thing should slide down if I'm lucky. Alright guys, so that thing has been taken out, and I'm pretty sure there's a catalytic converter in there. It's probably worth some money, but that thing weighs a frickin' ton. You can see how much room we got now. It's absolutely insane. What I need to do is figure out what I can do for the exhaust. I don't really want to wait on one. I will if I have to. I have a couple here that I could probably make work. I want to see what I could fit. If I can make one that'll look good, I'll do it. If I can't, I guess I'll have to order one. Alright, so not having a whole lot of luck with the pipes that I have right now as far as fitment. And of course, we still have our clap box here. Now, keep in mind, because it's the clapper, this thing's already been gutted, it looks like, for the most part. As far as the catalytic converter that was probably in it, you can kind of still see some of it. So I'll finish cleaning that out. I think I might just take a mallet and try to flatten this out. I only need to get about 3/8 of an inch. So if I can flatten that out, it'll work. I don't see any other way of utilizing this right now, though. And a lot of the slip-ons I see don't show any pictures on the bike, so I don't know how it's going to fit with this particular fairing kit. So I'll see if I can utilize this. If I can't, then I'll have to go other routes. Alright, so the only two pieces that I could utilize from the entire factory muffler was the silencer, which is the most important part, and the adapter, which is the second most important part that comes off the actual head pipe itself. And then I have some tubing. I'm about to do something. Alright guys, so here is Clapperbox 2.0. It turned out pretty good. The initial pipe I was welding with actually was part of an original, like a second gen R2 exhaust. And it was like titanium. I didn't realize that. I've never tried to weld that before, and it was melting and sparking a lot like aluminum. So I had up having to get an aftermarket pipe. Not made for a bike. It was just a 45 degree to bend that I made work. You can see there's a lot of filling, but I got everything filled in and it's all working. Pretty clean so far. And what we're going to do right now is, if I did everything right, we're going to throw it on. It's going to look good. Let's find out. Alright guys, so it turned out really nice. I'm super excited to hear what this thing sounds like. With that said, let's walk through back again to close out the fairing parts to show you exactly what I had to do to get these things mounted, and I want to get the rest of this bike together and fired out. Okay, so starting from this bottom corner here, you'll see that this was the original hole right here. We had to move it about an inch and an eighth forward to get the front end to fit like it's supposed to. We went ahead and tapped a small hole in the frame right here. It's the only modification we did to this actual bike itself and not the fairings. That holds it nice and tight there. Everything on that side so far bolted up. Again, everything in the uppers bolted up. That was perfectly fine. No changes made. Off to the other side, pretty much the same thing. There was a small bolt tapped in right here. And some little bit of shaving on both sides to make sure that this fit nice and snug. And then essentially, other than that, we had this front that had to be modified. We had to do a little bit of cutout to make sure the exhaust fit down there. And then back here in the back, you'll see we had a bolt that bolted right in its place. It's supposed to. And we did a little bit of adjustment right here. You'll see there's a little bit of cutout, and that's for our gear shift to clear. And then a little bit of cutout right here and right here, just to make sure that our kickstand was perfectly clear when it came up and down. That's the only modifications that were needed to get these fairings on. I'm excited. Let's get this gas tank on and move forward. All right, it's time to move forward. We're going to start working on the gas tank. Now, if some of you are unfortunately unlucky like I am and you're trying to do the same color scheme and your tank isn't the YKY blue, well, like mine that doesn't match anything, we're going to have to paint it. But before I can paint it, I got to get it sanded down and prepped and ready to go. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull off that front cover real quick, and then I'm going to rip off all the decals and get it sanded down. All right, so the cover's off, but there is one thing I do want to point out. I don't want you guys yanking on it and busting it off because you might be confused on how this thing comes off. I was a little confused myself. Now, there's a few different sets of bolts that look like these ones right here. You'll see them in the side, and it looks like it would just disconnect, and this cover would come off this bracket. Bracket would stay on the tank. That's not the case. There's actually two bolts, one here and one here. And for me, they're actually, I don't think it's the right bolt, but it's a hex head bolt. It's not a small Allen key bolt. And those actually popped out and the whole thing came loose. There is some Velcro on the back, but this thing comes off with it. It doesn't stay on the tank. So be aware of that because you can't get to all these ones on the inside. If you go yanking on this thinking that it's Velcroed on, you're just basically splitting the plastic from the metal. So you don't want to do that. Now it's off, like I said. I'm going to go ahead and get this thing stripped. The first thing I'm going to do is I am going to take some sandpaper to this thing. Now, unfortunately, these decals don't come off, so I'm going to have to try to sand all the way down through them. And then, obviously, at that point, you have to take a heat gun to try to scrape off as much as you can or peel off as much as you can. So I'm going to get that thing sanded down again. I'll show you what it looks like when it's all said and done. As you can see, most of the sanding has been done. Now, there is a couple things I want to point out to you guys. Well, I do have a small dent right here, and the easy way to find this is you'll see the areas of paint that didn't get sanded when you went over top of it. In addition to that, you're probably going to have little tiny stone chips here and there. You want to make sure to get those out, because if you don't sand those out completely, it's going to be an eyesore in the future. This comes down to the more time in prep, the better the outcome. So just like anything, you want to make sure the prep is done correctly. Now, I would also suggest if you're taking off your stickers, and you don't have to, because if you're doing the stickers like me, the stickers are going to cover most of that anyways, but I chose to do it just because I was doing it. If you don't get everything off, all that adhesive, all that stuff, you're going to have some nasty outcomes when you go to paint. You'll see there's just a bad reaction when you hit it with the paint. You obviously don't want that because then you got to try to get the paint off and it's just a mess. So again, prep is key. But you really just want to get to the point where everything's sanded down and smoothed out. Once it looks fairly good, then you'll be ready for paint. But for now, I got to fill in this little Bondo mark, or fill in this little mark with Bondo, and then I'm going to go ahead and hit it with some paint. I'll show you what I use, and we'll get into it. All right, so the dent is now fixed. I don't have to worry about that anymore. It's time to move forward. We're going to start getting into paint. Now, one thing I do want to share with you guys, I told you guys earlier that I wanted this build to be something that you guys can do from home as well. And I know a lot of people don't have the means or the equipment to use a large air gun or spray with a compressor. And so with that said, I wanted to make sure that you guys could do the same thing. So instead of painting that way, I found a kit right here that will spray the factory colors and allow you to use it right out of a rattle can. You guys don't have to have any special equipment. I'll put a link in the description for this below. With that said, it's time to get these things prepped. Now, I will put a link in the description below also for a canned primer that'll work for you. I'm not going to use a canned primer, but I'll get you one that obviously will work for you. Now, with that said, again, I'm going to go ahead and spray this primer on, and then we're going to put the base and mid coat and clear on, and we're going to see how it turns out. All right, guys, so getting ready to spray, the first thing I want you guys to do is get yourself a nice terry cloth rag or something that's not going to leave a lot of residue behind, and get yourself some rubbing alcohol and wipe everything down. That'll get things clean and wax-free and oil-free to make sure that your paint doesn't bubble or have a bad reaction. With that said, also get yourself some kind of, I guess, respiratory help, and that you should, one, be wearing a mask for sure. And then you want to be able to blow some of the fumes away from you when you open your garage, wherever you're at. I like to use a house filter like you see right there. It's like 99 cents, and it catches a lot of the paint. I've already used it a couple times. You can see the kind of the black on it. Works really, really well, and you won't end up with a lot of paint all over your cars or wherever it's blowing the house, whatever. So that said, I'm going to start spraying the primer right now. Let's see how it comes out. All right, guys, so the primer is now on. It's not completely dry yet, but I wanted to point some things out. You know, they say you are your own worst critic, and there's things that I see now I didn't see before. For example, you can see that dent right there. Fortunately, I believe this cover covers that completely for the most part, but I never noticed it. With that said, in that same area, there's an area that didn't sand down real perfect right there, as well as right there, if you can see it now. I'll be able to sand that out. That's not a problem. There's also a really tiny little dent, which is right there, if you can see that. Obviously, I couldn't see that before. So there's some small imperfections, but again, I'm gonna level it out with sandpaper for the most part once this thing's fully dry, and then we should be good. All right, guys, so it's time to start spraying this base coat. Now, I'm not a professional spray painter. I assume the basics are similar to that of painting a car. But if I read the instructions, it says shake really well for about 2 to 3 minutes. Make sure it's really good mixed up. And then we're going to spray thin coats about 15 minutes apart. The final coat will be a little bit heavier of a coat. Now, I did go ahead and spray spot spray on a piece of cardboard just to test to see what this stuff was going to be. And to my knowledge, or what it smells like, is it's going to be an enamel. I don't know 100% for certain, but most of the time, if it's like a 2K paint, it has an activator in the bottom you have to squeeze and shake together. And because this has some sort of shelf life, I would imagine, again, it's enamel. But again, thin coats, we're going to try the first one. We'll see how it turns out. All right, guys, so here is the first coat. It's just a light coat. It didn't cover all the way. Not the most atomized spray, so you can see it's kind of splattered. Not splattered, but it's just not... With a spray gun, you get a full coverage, even with a light coat, where this is kind of spotty. But that's okay. It's probably why it's better we're doing multiple coats. So overall, it looks pretty good. It does look similar to the color. After we get a couple coats on, we'll get the base on, we'll kind of compare this to the other panel that's already painted, and hopefully it's a pretty close fit. All right, coat 2. It's looking better. At first, I was really skeptical, thinking it was the wrong blue. It's getting closer to what it should be. Camera's sometimes a little bit harder to pick up the color difference. It's still a little bit light. I think the third coat ought to do it, and then again, of course, we have the pearl coat to help dial it in. So not terrible. We're getting there. All right, guys, so this is 4 coats of base and 1 coat of mid. I decided to only use a 1 mid coat. And I apologize for it looks like the light's flickering even though it's not. I put the panel right next to this that's a pre-painted panel, and it looks almost identical. So it's actually a really, really nice match. Now, for me, I have to let this dry for at least an hour, but then we're going to sit it on the bike because I have to line up the decals. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to put on the decals, and then I'm going to spray the clear over top of it. You guys don't have to do it that way. In case for some reason you want to change this body, but you want to keep the tank blue, might be a better option for you. But I would suggest, if this is something you're going to keep long term, that you put the decals underneath because you won't have to worry about those peeling off. The clear coat will protect it. Okay, so moving forward, after doing a little bit of body alignment and setting the tank on there, it appears that the word Suzuki and the green stripe don't hit the tank, so I'm going to go ahead and clear coat it right now. All right, moving forward, let's get this tank on. All right, tank is on. It's time for the seat and the side covers. All right, guys, so moving forward with all the things coming back together, We have one tad bit here that I want to put on that I'm not sure about, but most of the bikes that run these type of bike decals have the word Suzuki all the way across it, and therefore I've went ahead and printed the letters I need. I'm going to install them over top the side bits here. We'll see what it looks like. If I like it, it stays. If I don't, it goes. Okay, so the decals are on. You guys will understand better when I'm farther back and you guys get a full shot of what it looks like. It looks strange from this angle because of how the letters are offset, but wait till we get a full shot. I can't wait to show you guys. Okay guys, so one of the last things that we need to do is make this thing a little bit more safe and fill in these 3 holes, as in put in 2 mirrors on it. Alright, and so there are our mirrors. Are you guys excited to see what this thing turned out like? Let's take a look at it before and after. Alright guys, what do you think? I think this bike looks pretty darn sick. Overall, I even like the Suzuki going across the side, but it kind of ties everything in. I'm really surprised how well this turned out, and so I hope you guys enjoyed the way it turned out, because I'm about to go ride. But before I get into that, let's talk about the cost of this thing and what all was associated and was it worth it. Alright guys, so getting into it, you guys saw how much work was involved. In fact, it was a lot more than I anticipated. Fortunately, some of the parts I already had, so I was able to get away with saving a little bit there, but there was a lot of parts that were purchased, and let's talk about the actual cost. To start, the bike's cost was $1,000. The fairing kit we got for free. The headlights were $70. ECU, $300. Wiring harness, $85. Gauge case, $25. Exhaust mods, $25. Clutch and brake switches, $12. Tires, $215. Gas tank cover, $22. Levers, $25. Upper fairing stay, $50. Brake pads, $30. Headlight harness, $23. USB charger, $10. Air filter, $17. Regulator stator kit, $50. Starting solenoid, $16. Fairing bolt kit, $20. Seat, $45. And finally the battery costing $30, leaving us with a total of $2,070. Now overall, it's a pretty nice bike. I say it looks fantastic. It seems to run really well as well, so we'll find out when I get on the road what it's really like. But ask yourself, was all this work worth $2,000 for a 2007 GSXR 750? I don't know, you tell me. Hope you guys enjoy the content. I'll see you guys in the next one. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up, and if you're not already, definitely subscribe, and make sure you comment below on what your thoughts were on the bike. See you in the next one.